Hi everyone and welcome to Knitwit Co. Today I'm going to teach you how to do the basic beginning steps of how to knit something. And to show you that, I will start by teaching you how to knit a scarf. So what we're going to learn in this video is how to cast on, knit a garter stitch, and how to cast off and weave in your ends. So let's begin. So what I would recommend if you are first beginning learning how to knit is to use a thick yarn. So right here I have Lion brand yarn and it is Wool Ease Thick and Quick. As you can see, it's a pretty thick yarn, and when you're first learning how to knit, I find it easiest if you use the thickest yarn or a thicker yarn that you can use, because it's just easier to see stitches and it's easier for you to like get those fine motor skills before you move on to like a smaller knit. So as you can see, if you look on the back of any yarn, you can see that it has sizes, and this size is a size 6, so it's super bulky. So that's what I would recommend. This yarn recommends that if you are knitting, it also has like sizes for needles on here too. So like, for example, this recommends a 13 size needle or a 9mm size needle, and it has crocheting hook too, but I'm just going to teach you how to knit today. And it also has like all the information of machine washable and dryable, like all those kinds of things that you need to know if you are knitting something that you want to wash and whatnot. It also, on any sort of yarn, it has like what it is made of. So when you are making certain items, there's a certain material that you need to use for certain items. So for a scarf, it really doesn't matter, I don't think, unless you're particular about it, but this is 80% acrylic and 20% wool. So just know that like all of this information is all right here on the package. So today I'm going to use my knitting needles that I first bought when I learned how to knit. And these are a size, I don't know if you can see it, but these are just a size 11 or 8mm. Again, 11, 12, 13, like those sizes are really good for when you're first starting to learn how to knit, because when you use something smaller, it might be harder if you're just learning how to knit. So let's start with knitting. So today we're going to knit a garter stitch. And a garter stitch is probably the best way to learn how to knit and go from there. So it's just a knit stitch consistently. And what a knit stitch consistently looks like is, here's an example. I mean, this is used with smaller needles and smaller yarn, but this is what a garter stitch would look like, and it's just knit, 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 knit. And if you look, just so you can see a difference of how like there's different stitches, here's the garter stitch right here, and the border is a garter stitch. This is all stock knit stitch. I will get to that in a later video, but today we are just going to focus on what a garter stitch is. Okay, so let's begin. So find the end of your yarn, and I found mine, and you just take a little bit out. And what you first want to do is make a slip stitch, or a slip knot, excuse me. So what I usually do is I twist it around just like this, my hand, and then I pull on the longer. See how there's a shorter and a longer, because the longer is connected to the skein of yarn. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to pull it, then you just pull it right through, just like that. And what's great about a slip stitch or slip knot is you can just pull it apart like nothing ever happened. So again, do this, put it around your hand, cross it over just like this, and then I grab the longer piece that is connected and I pull it through just like that. So what I do with that is I take one of my knitting needles and I put it right on, and then I tighten it. And you just find, so I tighten it with the longer, and there you go. You have your first stitch on your needle. So this next thing that I'm going to teach you is how to do a cast on. So a cast on is just something that you need to know how to do so you can have all your stitches on here and you can begin how to stitch or how to knit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull, make sure that you are pulling on the longer yarn, because if you are pulling on, if you cast on from this short piece of yarn, it's not going to work out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull from my skeiny yarn that leads to my skeiny yarn, and I'm going to pull it like this with my 4 fingers, and I'm going to do a thumbs up, okay? Now what you're going to do is you go thumbs down, just like this, and then like that. So you see how it crosses over just like that, and there is a hole in between there? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my needle right underneath, if you can see, just like this, and then you just pull on it. But you don't want it too super tight because remember we need to knit these stitches. If you're about to knit a scarf, depending on how thick you want the scarf, I would do like 12 to 15 if you want like a little bit of a thicker scarf, 10 if you want like more of a thinner scarf, but with this chunky yarn, I really like a thick scarf. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast on 15 stitches. So again, cast on, pull it, thumbs up, thumbs down, and then you go around to create, you know, that little loop in between there. There's a little space in between your thumb. And then you just put it right through, just like that, and then you tug on it just a little bit. Okay, one more time. Go like this, thumbs down, around, there's a little loop. I put my needle through there, and then I yank it just a little. Okay, and so let's do, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need 10 more. 6, 7, oops, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then there's 15. So these little loops right here, these are all stitches. And if you count them, I have 15. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So there's 15 stitches right there. Okay? And now, again, there are many ways to cast on, but this is just like a beginner way that, again, when you can refine these skills and really hone in on them, then you're able to, you know, get really good at it. There are other ways that you can cast on, and like for specific things, it just leaves like a nicer bind off, you know, for certain projects. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to grab our other needle and we're going to start to do the garter stitch. And all the garter stitches is just knit, 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 knit. So this is like a knit and a garter stitch. So what I'm going to do is I take my needle and I put it underneath and I bring the one needle that I slipped into the back. What I then do is I wrap it around just like so, okay, just like so. It's in between the 2 needles, as you can see, and then I pull it down through the other needle and then I just slip it off, right off. So I now have 1 stitch on my my new needle. So again, go under, okay, and what I do is I wrap around, okay, then you see how there's a hole right there, and I just bring my needle through here, and then I just pull it right off. Okay, so again, if I can, go through, bring this needle to the back, around, slip it right through. One more time, slip it through, go around, just like that. And when you're knitting, make sure that you keep the stitches relatively close to the top of the needle. It's really hard to knit when your stitches are like down here. It's actually kind of impossible. So make sure that it's like relatively close to the tip so that it's easy to, you know, knit. You go through just like that. Just like that. And oops. And there you go. Oops. Okay, so what you have just done, or what I have just done, is I have knitted my first row. And what I like to do after each row is I like to count how many stitches I have, because it is very easy to pick up when you are learning how to knit. It's very, very easy to pick up or lose stitches. So what I would recommend is just counting after each row to make sure that you indeed have 15 or how many you started with. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so that's 15 stitches, and so I am on track, and I have started my garter stitch. Let's continue. Okay, so again, just take my needles, go around, go under, and then pull through. So again, go through, around, pull under, through. Around, pull around, see again, I'll do that like that. And pull around, just like this. Okay, just like that. It might be beneficial for you to just kind of spread them out so it's easier to hold on to these needles. Okay, and there again, I have knitted 2 rows, and you can kind of see the garter stitch coming into effect. You can kind of see it more on this side. So when you're knitting a scarf, I really don't have measurements or, how many, rows that you need to knit in order to get a specific length, because, like, really, it's all up to you. How long or how short you want it. If you want to sew it up at the end and make an infinity scarf, that would be cool too. So if you want to make like a longer scarf, I would recommend, if you're going to use this chunky yarn, to get like 2 to 3 skeins of yarn. That way you can make it as long as you need to. So yeah, I'm just going to knit a couple more rows so you can get the idea of what your stitch should look like. Alright, so now pretending that, well, first off, here's a garter stitch. I mean, it's a little chunkier than the ones that I have showed you. When you use a bigger needle and a bigger yarn, like it's bigger. I mean, it makes sense. It's bigger stitches than, it looks bigger than the other ones that I've showed you. So again, this is just the front and the back. It's very similar. It's a very simple stitch. And so what I'm going to teach you now is how to cast off. So when you cast off, there's, again, another different, or a bind off. There's many different ways to do this, but this is, again, just the beginner way. It's always a clean, this is always the one that you can go to. It's always a clean bind off. It's always looks good. But again, depending on which project that you're doing and how you want your bind off to be, you can use different ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to knit 2 stitches, just like we have been doing. So knit 2 stitches, just like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the bottom stitch and stick our needle in there. It doesn't matter how, just stick your needle in there. We're going to make sure that the top stitch holds down. So what I would do is I would just hold on to the yarn, and we're going to pull the bottom stitch over the top stitch. All right, and so we'll just do that again. So knit 1 more. So there's always 2 on this, and then what we're going to do, hold on to the top yarn. Again, slide our needle underneath. We might need, you know, our hands to do this. It's not always the easiest thing to do. And then we're just going to slide our stitch right over. So again, knit. We're going to take our bottom and just pull it right over. It's a very simple stitch, very easy to know how to do. And again, it leaves a nice clean bind off, so your products always look finished and they always look completed. So we're always going to make sure that there are 2 stitches on the one needle, and then we're just going to, again, pull it off just like so. And as you can start to see, like I said, it leaves a very nice bind off. It's very pretty. It always does. It always does with this bind off. And then you can, again, over. This takes a little while, depending on how many stitches you have. But again, we always just want to make sure that we have 2 stitches on there. No more, because it could get confusing. And it just wouldn't work. And then again, this is just pretending that the scarf is at the right length or at the length that I want it. I don't think anybody would actually wear a scarf this length, but this is just so you guys get the general gist of how to use garter stitch and how to start off and end a scarf. So again, and then for the last one, what we are going to do is we are going to take this. So these are the last 2 stitches. And what we're going to do is we're just going to pull it over just like so. Okay, and we have 1 stitch left. And look, it leaves this really pretty bind off. It's like I said, it always looks finished. It always looks nice. No matter whichever stitch you use, this bind off always looks nice. It looks like a nice braid. So next what we're going to do is we are going to finish it. So what I like to do is I like to yank on it a little bit, make sure that you know, the stitch is a little big. You could just take your knitting needle right out of it and make sure that it's a little large. What you're going to do is you're going to cut off from the skeiny yarn, and you're just going to take this little loop and you're going to put it through and you're going to pull it tight. Okay? And now what I would recommend doing, since you have these long, is you weave in your ends. So what I just like to do, since this is such a chunky knit, is I just like to, find a spot. I know this isn't the right way to, but you just weave through the stitches. With smaller yarns, you need an actual needle to do this, but since this is such a chunky yarn, I can just pull the yarn right through. You just don't want, these things flying around. And then once you went through a few stitches, you just cut it off as close as you can, and it should stay. Just yank on it a little bit. There might be a little, but you should be all set. And yeah, pretending that this is a scarf, you have just made yourself a garter stitch knit scarf. I hope this tutorial helped you. If you guys want anything specific for me to show you how to do, please feel free to put a comment down in the comments section. I'd be happy to take requests and do whatever you guys want me to do. All right, thank you.